How about visioning? You hear that a lot. The word is being used a lot in our area. You have a vision for Battle Creek? Well, there is a visioning process going on as it relates to the city's master plan. Christine Zuzga is with us this half hour on the program. She is the planning manager in the city of Battle Creek, and we're going to learn more about that right now. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the time today.
Thank you for having me.
So what is the master plan? That'd be a good question to start with, I guess.
Sure. The master plan is a 20-year plan for physical space of the city. Growth, development, housing, transportation. So it's a long-range policy document that really helps guide those types of issues in the city and helps the government be able to really manage those types of things.
So when we talk about the physical layout, and you named a few things, but what are you generally concerned with in the master plan? Use of certain spaces or all spaces, or what does that really mean?
All spaces. It's a plan for the entire community and for all of the space within the community. We also work with adjacent townships and municipalities to make sure that we're planning compatibly with what they are doing. And then it also has some very short-term process in order to try to implement that larger plan.
I see.
So it includes both large-scale and small-scale.
So as you look at that master plan, maybe there's an area there that needs certain attention, and you could probably give us examples of what that might be. Sure. But over the course of those years, you say, okay, this is what's going to happen in this spot, and here's the plan in which we're going to do that.
Mm-hmm. The first set of community engagement that we had this past fall dealt with issues and concerns, and then it also addressed assets. And so we had the NPCs hosted a variety of workshops to try to elicit from the community what they felt were the concerns and issues, and then also what the assets were. So now that we have that collected, we're going to look at vision and what we want what we want the community to look at, how we want to best utilize those assets, and then also how we can address those concerns and issues.
Do you have a couple of concerns that came up off the top of your head that you remember from those sessions?
Sure. Yep. Walkability is one. Sidewalks are great and they're important. However, they need to connect to something. And so connectivity between downtown and the adjacent neighborhoods is a good example. Connectivity between adjacent residential neighborhoods and even Columbia Avenue, for example, people being able to walk along Columbia. So the connectivity, walkability is a huge issue. Number two is the river, being able to better utilize the river that we have now, the two rivers actually that we have now, in being able to use them fully and being able to capitalize on the assets that they are instead of a lot of it's zoned industrial and not used. So those are the two of the ones that came up.
Boy, that makes sense. You talked about that walkability thing, and you talked about Columbia. I have seen people walking in the road on Columbia. You know, they're off to the right, but still, if you're driving in the right lane, you feel you need to get over and, get out of that way there. So presumably that was one of the things that was brought up, that the sidewalks are what, not there or not accessible, or both?
Both along Columbia in particular. There's a challenge with that because the right-of-way is the curb line in a lot of areas of Columbia. Right. So there's really no room for sidewalks. So it's taking a different look at that to figure out how we can still accommodate sidewalks or a trail system or something along there to at least allow for people to not have to walk in the street. Interesting.
All right. So we'll talk about perhaps some of the other things that came up in that process, and then this whole visioning portion means the next steps. We'll discuss that too, and when that particular session will take place, so you can join in if you'd like. That's coming up. 8:14 today. Christine Zuzga is here, planning manager at the city of Battle Creek. There is a master plan visioning workshop coming up tomorrow. We'll tell you where and when in just a couple of minutes. So, yeah, that's an interesting perspective. You gather information about what people's concerns are and that sort of thing, and then move forward with maybe how to address those. And how many years did you say this goes, master plan?
It's a 20-year plan.
Oh, my.
We need to review it at least every 5 years, or if there's any significant changes within the community.
Okay. So when you talk about walkability was another thing that came up in your previous session between downtown and the neighborhoods. Is that a sidewalk issue mostly, too?
Not necessarily. There's sidewalks that link the neighborhoods to downtown, but they're not always the most friendly walk as
see.
far as trying to get downtown, for example, to Horrocks.
Sure.
You have truck traffic, you have the trains and things like that. So it's not always best conducive to walking. It's usually quicker to drive. And so we want to try to change that dynamic a little bit. We want to focus on downtown housing. And so if we do that, we also then need to make sure people can get to where they want to go easy.
Sure. The notion is if you're living in an urban setting like downtown, you may be walking more, right? And that means having the ability to do so. Sure. So what do you wish to have happen tomorrow?
So part of the plan identifies what we want the community to be and then how to get there. And so tomorrow's piece is really what do we want to be in specific to land use and development and growth and what best can happen in your neighborhood to make it successful. So that's what we want tomorrow is the big picture piece. We've already talked about the negative narrative kind of in this past fall. So we really want to talk about the aspirations, what we want to be, so that way we can figure out how to get there.
So, and when you talk about that, are you speaking broadly, or are we speaking about one's own neighborhood or one's own street, or are we saying we want Battle Creek to somehow rank on a national level in some category, and so it's a broader focus?
It's going to be both, really. The first part will be more broad, and then there will be breakout sessions depending on certain neighborhoods and corridors.
So how do you attract folks to participate in this from various areas so you have a representation from all around?
We really rely on the NPCs. They're the feet on the ground to try to really help get residents in the community to meetings like this. So we've talked to them about trying to get people there.
Those are neighborhood organizations.
That's the neighborhood organizations. It's been in the Shoppers. It's also been in the Inquirer.
Okay.
The radio.
Yeah. So do folks have to tell you they're coming ahead of time, or can they just show up?
They can just show up.
Okay. When will this be?
It'll be tomorrow at 6:30 at the Cool Family Community Center.
Okay, right downtown. All right. So if someone's listening to this for the first time, they may want to just take not too long, obviously, but a day or so to think about some of the things that are important to them as it relates to this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so you are going to ask them to participate. Do the folks stand up and talk about what they envision, or does that come out of the smaller sessions?
It'll come out of the smaller sessions. There'll be opportunities for them to speak throughout, but they don't have to feel uncomfortable speaking in front of large groups. It can be done more in an intimate setting. Got it.
Okay. Apparently that's what we're afraid of most, public speaking or something. Yeah.
I understand.
All right. We'll talk in a moment about how this relates, if at all, to the BC Vision process. We'll get to that in just a minute on WBCK 820. Good morning. Christine Zuzga is with us this half hour, the planning manager, City of Battle Creek. Master Plan Visioning Workshop tomorrow, Cool Family Center, 6 o'clock, you said?
6:30.
6:30. And it's your chance to impart some information about what your vision is for the City of Battle Creek. Could be a broad vision, could be something specific. You'd like to hear both. And those are going to shake out by way of some smaller group sessions that then will culminate in some information that would shake out from all of those groups. Then what happens, Chris?
So after tomorrow's session, we are working on a market study. The consultants are actually working on the market study because we want to make sure that the vision that we have is also based in some reality.
Oh, yeah.
There's market conditions at work every single day. We want to make sure that whatever we're proposing is something that can be realistic and can actually be implemented. And it's going to be based on market projections for housing and industrial retail uses and things like that. So that's going to be coming up. And then we also have design workshops for specific corridors throughout the city. So that's going to be, we know we want to improve this corridor. What do we want it to physically look like, and how do we want it used? What type of uses do we want in there? What do we want it to look like as far as the structures, setback of buildings and parking lots and things like that? And so that'll help us then design a zoning ordinance to help achieve that goal.
Wow. So you expect that there will be a fair amount of action items and action plans that come out of this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what kind of a time frame then would we look at? So, we have a concern that might have been expressed, a vision that will be expressed. Then you carry it forward. If there's something there you recognize as viable, this thing happens fairly quickly.
Sure. The plan should be adopted hopefully by September or October of this year, and it'll contain an implementation schedule of projects and action items. With planning, it never happens just one after the other. It's all going to pretty much happen, not all, but a lot of it at the same time. And so it'll help prioritize those activities for the planning department and other city staff as we go forth with trying to do those things.
And this is something we presume that the city commission votes on to accept it?
The planning commission will vote on it, and then we'll also send it to the city commission for their ratification.
Okay. So that happens, and then this is a 20-year plan, but you'll review it again in 5.
At the very least, we have to, by law, review it in 5, but my intention is to use it every year. We use it all the time anyway, but at least to take a look at it every year to make sure the projects that we're focusing on for that coming year are met in the plan, and so that way we're moving forward on it. It's not something that we'll just sit on a shelf and look at every 5 years.
So when you look at it again in 5 years, is that an action item potential change kind of thing, or it's just a check step?
It could be either. We have to review it to see if updates are needed, and so if there's significant change in the community with population or employment opportunities changing, things like that, then we should take a look at it again. If there's nothing like that, we at least need to review it, and then we can just approve the plan as it stands.
The word vision gets used a lot these days in Battle Creek as it relates to the catch name called BC Vision, which is a whole process that's similar to this, but not necessarily master plan focused, I presume.
Correct. Yep. The VC Vision was very important because it really helps set the stage for the master plan. There are components in what they've done that will absolutely tie into our master plan. For example, their goal for culture vitality and the action steps underneath that all tie into the physical growth and development of the community. So those things absolutely will tie into the master plan. We recognize that there's been significant amount of community outreach and engagement the last few years, and we do not want to start over from that. We want to take what we've already learned and then incorporate that into this plan.
So is there a connection somewhere in the process of the master plan visioning that incorporates what BC Vision has come up with?
Yes, it will. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's part of the requirement of our consulting firm is to make sure that they incorporate all of those other plans that we've worked on the last few years to not recreate the wheel, but to actually incorporate those findings into our plan.
Okay. And there's a consultant because municipalities all over the country do this. There's a process by which this should be done, I presume, and they are the ones that know how to go about this.
Absolutely. It's a large effort.
Yeah. Have you been through this before, I presume? Yeah. But still, as you go along, it might be helpful to have an outside person who says, in communities your size, we've seen this happen or this process work when trying to implement plans or trying to evoke suggestions from people. This works.
Sure.
That's probably what they do, right? Yeah. All right. So what's next then? This ends. And you have it, but you don't really go over it again in detail for 5 years.
Well, we're going to go through it every year, at the very least. We use it for any policy decisions that are required by Planning Commission or City Commission. So if somebody wants to do a rezoning of property or special land use or anything that requires their approval, all of those need to be tied back to the master plan in order for them to get approval. So the planning department uses it every day. And also the capital improvement plan that's used by the entire city for how we want to expend funds for capital projects, those all need to be tied back to the master plan as well. And so when we go through that project every year, we're going to be pulling out the plan to make sure that that projects are being consistent with what's been identified.
This is like a foundation.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's tell them one more time. This visioning session is tomorrow.
Tomorrow at 6:30 at the Cool Family Community Center.
All right. Don't need to call ahead or RSVP. Just be there and bring your ideas. All right. Well, let us know what the next steps are. If you need to stop back and let us know what's happening next, we're happy to make room.
Great. We'd be happy to come.
Christine Zuzga is the planning manager of the city of Battle Creek. Thank you.
Thank you.